Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Ngozi, and if you are watching for the first time, then don't forget to subscribe and click on that little notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also, you can leave a comment down below and we can carry on the conversation from this chat into the comments after the video has gone live, okay? Now I'm going to go straight into the story. It's 3 babies, 3 C-sections. I don't want it to be a long video. I'll try. I'll try. There's nothing wrong with a long video, but I don't want it to be that long, okay? Now, I've had 3 babies, 3 pregnancies, no miscarriages, and 3 C-sections. And my heart really goes out to all those women who have had miscarriages. I can't begin to imagine how painful that experience would have been for them. In my case, I had other complications, and if you look into the top right hand corner of your screen, that's if you're watching on a device, then an icon should pop up taking you to a video where I spoke about having polycystic ovaries and fibroids. In fact, I was told I'll never have children, so here I am 3 babies later. Anything is possible, anything is possible, and I had no interventions. Anyways, I had the first child conceived as I expected to. There was no issue there, no delay, and the next thing I realized is I had fibroids after I'd been to see the doctor. And what that means is that you could go into labor, among other issues that could come with fibroids. You could go into labor a lot earlier than planned because you've got that baby, you've got the fibroids, and your belly holding what would be twice the normal size of a pregnancy, and trigger your brain, I don't know, into thinking that you're due and it's time to have your baby. You know what I mean? So I had that situation, and the thing is, growing up, I always heard 9 months. When people talk about pregnancy, they say 9 months. There's no such thing as 9 months. It's 10 months. That's 40 weeks. You get a book, and in the book you get 40 weeks of logging all that's happening with the child. And I now thought, wow, it's not 9 months. I've got to carry this baby and these fibroids with a big tummy for 10 months. So now here I was thinking, the idea of going into labor a lot earlier than is normal is not really a bad idea, even though it's triggered by these fibroids. But that didn't happen for me. I got to 40 weeks, no labor. Got to 41 weeks, no labor. I didn't even know you could go up to 42 weeks, and then they might think of an intervention if there is no complication. I thought, am I going to be pregnant forever? Oh my goodness, this isn't what I was hoping for. So I get to 42 weeks, and then I just take myself to the hospital, and I'm so uncomfortable. I've got all these aches and pains, and they say to me, you've got to go back home. We'll just keep sending you home until you are in labor or until your waters are broken. Now, one of the midwives assisted me. She said, come into this room, I'll see what I can do for you. And she then, with a glove, put her hand through and irritated the cervix so as to trigger the breaking of the water. And she said, this is the best I can do, and hopefully this should move things along. I went back home, started making the dinner, and my waters just went. Now, not only did my waters go, but it was black as night, tar. That meant meconium. Instead of having her first poo outside of my body in a nappy, it turns out she's 42 weeks, right? So she's had it in my tummy. And this is lethal to the baby. It can kill your child. And, by inhaling that, by taking that in to the nostrils inside of the womb, it will go into their lungs and compromise, the lung sacs and so on. And it's usually an emergency. It's got to be a C-section immediately. However, they will still try to see if they can deliver the baby normally. They always try to resort to a C-section if all else fails, So I was taken to the hospital and hooked up to the monitors. I was given a room for delivery. My husband was on the side, and this amazing midwife who had been looking after me in the weeks running up to the delivery happened to be on shift that night, which was amazing. So she was monitoring the baby's heart rate, my heart rate, and they said they were going to induce labor. Inducing of labor can be a very painful experience, I was told, but I never experienced labor. The name of the medication medication for inducing labor, well, here in the UK, is Oxytocin. So I was given the first bag of Oxytocin, connected in, and nothing happened. No labor kicked off at all. In fact, I fell asleep and woke up in the morning. And when I woke up in the morning, I didn't wake up in the morning. She woke me up in the morning and said, "Are you all right?" And I said, "Yes, what's going on?" She said, "We've given you a second bag of Oxytocin and labor didn't even start. Your uterus didn't even flinch. And your baby isn't doing very well at all. She's, going down in the grade of doing well, and so it's going to have to be a C-section." So they brought in the surgeons who had come out from an operation just then, and they were sort of hesitant, and the midwife was more for, "Can we hurry up and get this lady in? This baby isn't doing very well." And they were just hesitant. And they now communicated and said they have been in surgery all night. It would be best for the surgeons coming in this morning, taking over fresh and bright, to take over the surgery, the C-section for me. That was a good idea, absolutely a good idea. So before long, I was wheeled into a theatre, and my child was born at 10 minutes past 10 in the morning. Beautiful girl. Now I was then sent back to the ward. It was an epidural, so it's given to you in your backbone, right in there with a really long needle, and you lose feeling from a certain point midway down to your legs. So a catheter is then put in to your body so that your urine can drain out, because the lower part of your body isn't working, and then until you get feeling back in your legs, then that would remain in your body. But once feeling returns, then that can be removed and you can use the restroom and bathroom as you would normally without any issues. Back in the ward, I realized you've got to sit upright in bed. Your baby is kept to the side, and your guests come and they say hello, hi for a few minutes, well, for maybe a few hours. They're visiting hours, and then they go. Now that was the case for me. It was wonderful. They came, they left, and then I was left to it with my child. Now, what I'm about to tell you is not in any way to disregard the amazing work that nurses, doctors, my husband is a clinical practitioner, and I'm not in any way taking the light away from how hard they work. However, there are, like Jim Rohn would say, 9 people in the world, 9 really terrible, horrible, miserable people in the world, only 9. But they move around a lot. So we're not going to take away the bright light from all those millions that do so well and shine it on the one person who is absolutely not connected to the reality of kindness. I had this one lady, an auxiliary nurse, who came into the cubicle where I was staying, and she advised that I had to get up and walk. This was on the second day, and not yet, I wasn't 24 hours out of the theatre yet, but I am supposed to get up and walk. So I didn't know that anyway, but that is the right thing to do. But what I didn't know is that I had to do it myself. So just very politely, I said, "Okay, I'll get up. Could you help me please? Because I had the cut, and whichever way you moved, it would hurt really badly. You're told not to cough. You're told not to sneeze. That if you want to cough, then swallow hard, because any jolt to that area, it's really painful, just really painful, okay?" So I said, "Oh, could you help me?" She says, No, we're not supposed to help you at all." And I thought, wow, okay. She said it really harshly. And I thought, okay. Now, I didn't know whether she was saying that because she was annoyed and didn't want to, and she was supposed to. There was just no explanation. And this is something I want to point out to new mothers who are in the hospital. You don't really know what to expect. I didn't know what to expect, and she wasn't communicating. So I thought, okay, thing is, I had elevated my bed, and having elevated my bed, it enabled me to put my hand over to where my baby was, and bring her over, nurse her, put her back. So I needed the bed to be put down. So I said, "Oh, the bed is a little bit too high." And what you should expect is the auxiliary nurse to advise you on, say, rolling over to your side. Now sit up at that point. oh, at this point, let your legs swing down. I've never been in a hospital before, never been in an operation before. They're meant to guide you through what you're meant to do to get up with the least possible injury to what, you know, is already an injury down below. She didn't communicate any of this. And so I started shuffling any which way, how, what way to get off the bed. And in each turn, my cut was burning. I was feeling burns. And I said to her, I'm a little bit too high. The bed is a lot higher than I thought because I was helping my baby and my legs are not going to get to the floor. And she just said, oh, she just got to the side of the bed. I don't believe it was intentional. I think she was probably having the worst day. They always say make an excuse for people when they do something wrong or behave out of what you think might not be their character. The NHS is overworked. The NHS staffs are not treated to the best standard. I know that for a fact because I was a patient, and I also have my husband who works in the same field, and I know that when staff are treated poorly, they execute the job poorly as well. And I'm thankful that I'm able to see past the horrible treatment to the cause, or possible cause, of why that happened. But she lowered the bed with the mechanism available to lower the bed, and it suddenly just jumped to the next level with a big bang and a clang of metal with me on it, and the cut and the wound burned. I didn't know what that was, but I just know it burned. And I was like, I didn't know what was going on. I thought, is she trying to kill me? What have I done? Why is this woman angry? What is going on? I just knew I was in a lot of trouble. I was in trouble, okay? Now I decided to carry on with the instruction, got off the bed, lots of pain. She stepped aside. I got to the chair, held onto the arm of it, and then sat in the chair. And then she just went, ugh, and just walked out. I was sat there and I waited. My blood had dripped from the bed, dripped onto the floor, onto my slippers, down my laps, my robe, and I was just sat there like that, sort of like waiting and sort of lifting myself up with both arms because of the cut, the C-section. It was about 20 minutes or so. She never came back and my baby started crying. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know why I was there. She said nothing. Again, first time mom, you can ring a bell, you can make a complaint, you can call out for assistance. I wouldn't know. And I'm telling you, just nothing. I got up, walked towards my baby, got into the bed, pulled my baby towards me, brought her in to breastfeed, and I just started crying. You're not supposed to sneeze. You're not supposed to cough. This woman had broken me. Boof, it came out and I started crying. And the pain. And I cried so badly. I sobbed so badly. And that was my experience. The second child I had, I got pregnant. I knew right away I wasn't going to go to that hospital. I just couldn't think about it. It was so traumatic for me. I just knew I would never go back there. So I went to a different hospital. And in this story, it's the story of having people put their hands on your belly. Don't let people put their hands on your belly. What happened to me is I'd gone to a meeting. My son was scheduled to be delivered the next week. And it wasn't meant to be a cesarean. It was going to be a normal delivery. And what happens is after a first C-section, there's a 50% chance that you would have another one, or perhaps you deliver normally. So there's still a chance that you could deliver your child normally. Never mind Hollywood, they're opting for C-sections anyway, and even surrogates. But in my case, I was glad to try out normally. I didn't want that cut. I didn't want the whole process, the operation, none of it, especially with the way things turned out. But yes, I was hoping that I would be normal, and right up until the week where he was to be delivered, he had been engaged 3/4 quarters, right? Down into the pelvis. So you got 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and then 4 and 4. So he was 3/4 nicely socketed. His head was socketed into my pelvic area. So it was shaping out to be that I was going to have a normal delivery, and that was great for me. It was 3-4 days away. I attended a meeting, and at that meeting said goodbye to friends and so on. And we knew that I would return, say 3 months later after the baby was born. So it was a last bye, oh, wish you the best, da 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 da. And as I was leaving the meeting with my husband, this man came from the side and just put both hands on my belly and was like, oh, this is so big. And I remember I just jolted, like, gosh, I don't want this man to touch my belly. I don't let people touch my belly. There's so many reasons why you shouldn't. You know, people carry with them a different presence, and, you know, laying your hands on someone, you know, can interfere with innocence, as the case may be. Now, when he did that, I jolted backwards, and I was so shocked. I wasn't sure what was going on, and there was his hands, and my gosh, I just moved away and walked off, and I had that pain in the side of my pelvis. It was so painful. It was so painful. There was a rumble in my tummy, and it was so painful. Couldn't understand what it was. And then on the way home, I thought, I'm going into labor. So we got to the house, and it carried on, and it was so severe. I said to my husband, we've got to go. It's here. I think it's here. We get to the hospital, and we're 3-4 days early. We get there, and they put me in a bed, and they scan, and they look at the baby, and she's looked at the documentation. Supposed to be 3 over 4 engaged, but now he's done a 180, standing upright, and his legs are down in my pelvis on top of his umbilical cords. And now it's an emergency to get him out. And I'm thinking, wow, it was all good to go. And this man had to show up. Yes, some of you might say, well, maybe it had nothing to do with him. I don't know. But the sequence of events, him putting his hands on my tummy, and the reaction I had inside of me, and the instant pain, and, you know, the movement, severe movement. And then to find out my son had been disengaged and turned upside down, you know, accounted for the severe pains I was feeling as we got towards the house, and then from the house to the hospital, and then resulting in we've got to get him out. Don't let them put their hands on your tummy. Keep it private, and, you know, really give off that air of don't touch me. Okay, yes, I'm pregnant, it's cute, but don't touch me. Okay, it's necessary. It's your business. If you want them to cuddle, hey. Maybe close family friends, that's okay, but not strangers. Be careful with that. Okay, children are pure, and you want them to not encounter things you don't want them to encounter. So I went into the theater, my baby boy was born, and the staff at that hospital get a 10 out of 10. They were amazing, they were loving, caring, they felt like a family, they were funny. It was just great, just great. I remember in the middle of the night, my son was crying, and this woman just came into the ward, took the baby, and said they'll give him some formula, even though I was breastfeeding, and said just go back to sleep. And they took my son, and I woke up in the morning. I had a night's sleep in the hospital. I didn't know what that was like. In the first hospital I was in, I had babies crying in the ward. The nurses did nothing. In fact, in my first hospital where I had my daughter, the nurses called the police on one of the women and said she'd abandoned her child to keep crying through the night. I promise you, she was across the way from me. And they called the police, and she was crying. She said, why would they do that? The baby's crying, she's exhausted, and she couldn't help. They called the police, and the police eventually left. But that's what they did in that hospital. Now, I'm not going to give the name of the hospital before I get sued, but it's a fact. That's what happened. But in this hospital I'm talking about, they took my child. I woke up in the morning and my son was beside me, asleep. Oh my gosh, that felt like heaven. It truly felt like heaven. Anyway, I got home and all was well, and that was a beautiful experience. Now, when I had my daughter, my last child, she was scheduled for a C-section right out the gate as soon as I was pregnant. The date was given, and I went in, all was perfect, all was fine, walked into the hospital, a completely different town because we'd moved house to raise our young family. And after the operation, I was wheeled out into the recovery ward. There, I was offered toast and tea. I was confused. I thought, we're never given food after a baby is born. I wasn't sure. Again, this is the third go, and I thought, well, listen, I'm hungry. Thank you. And later on that evening, they brought some more tea and said, here you are, we need you to eat, we need you to. I said, oh wow, thank you. Took some more toast, had some more tea, and lots of tea during the course of the day. And then I was wheeled back to my room, normal maternity ward where, you know, you've had your baby. And the nurses there were amazing. It was beautiful. It was like I'd just gone home. While I was there, I remember feeling really tired. My family had visited. We were taking pictures. I was just so exhausted. I didn't know what was wrong, but I just knew I was so exhausted, really tired. And I couldn't wait for them to leave. And when they were gone, I just went to sleep. When my baby would need to be fed, I would pick up my baby, feed my baby, change the nappy, put her back, fall asleep. I woke up in the morning and something was wrong. Something inside of me shifted. Before I knew what was going on, I started throwing up, intensely throwing up. It was like a bullet from the inside of me. No coughing, no sneezing, no. Ngozi decided vomiting was the way to go. I mean, I didn't set it off, but off it came. And so the burn. I remember as soon as I started vomiting, in through the door came the nurses. They sounded the alarm. And I remember thinking, I'm just throwing up. Why are they sounding the alarm? It was a code. What was it? You're not supposed to be throwing up after a C-section within 24 hours of having a C-section. Apparently it was severe. I was dying. They walked in. I thought it was normal. I thought, well, I just threw up. They rushed in, they held me down, I was throwing up, the pain was insane, my eyes were gushing water, and then it was like a numbness from down below, just a numbness. The burning just turned into a numbness. The pain was crazy. My head blew up, it was insane. And then they managed to settle me down in the bed, and I just remembered starting to feel the need to fall asleep. The nurses came and started talking to me. I was falling asleep. They were explaining to me what was going on. They said they're gonna have to take me back to recovery, and from recovery they need to speak to the surgeons, and the surgeons would have to decide if I'm going back into the theatre. I couldn't hear the half of what they were saying. I kept feeling the need to sleep. They kept trying to wake me up. They said, try stay awake. Ngozi, try stay awake. You're gonna have to try and stay awake. I couldn't understand what was going on. I was dying. Now I got back to recovery. I told my husband they weren't allowed to visit at that time because it wasn't visiting hours, and in recovery you're only allowed one visitor, so they had to stay home. They started praying for me. They heard what had happened. It was so confusing because everything was fine just, you know, barely 24 hours ago. Why this? What's going on? And while I was there, they started trying to investigate if I had eaten something wrong. I said, no, you gave me food. You gave me toast. You gave me tea. They said they're trying to identify what's going on. I'm suffering a widespread infection on the inside, and it's spreading. I'm getting darker. And they started giving me bags of antibiotics, bags and bags of antibiotics. Next stop, the urine wasn't filtering through to the bag, so organs were not really working as they should. And they also said that my bowels were completely silent, not functioning at all. They proceeded to then put a tube down my nose to start draining my abdomen in preparation before the surgeons arrived to make a final decision. And with this procedure, it would mean cutting you long ways. So as I'm sitting, from down below this way, and I've just come from an operation barely 24 hours ago. It was going down. I didn't understand what was going on. All I know is I was feeling sleepy. That sleepy sensation is you leaving the planet. I didn't know that. The nurse, the matron of the recovery ward, came over to me and she said, please, I'm bringing you more water. I need you to start drinking this water. I couldn't drink. This tube was down my nose into my belly, and they were worried if it had gone into my lungs or whether it had gone into my tummy. They won't be able to tell until they see it draining. It wasn't draining. So they couldn't tell whether the vomiting had emptied me out or had it gone into the lungs, and they weren't going to move me like that to an x-ray to find out what's going on. They just believed they had put it in the right place. drink more water. She says, drink more water. I can't even swallow. The pain of having a tube down your nose is a joke. I see that a lot on TV and, in hospitals, if I passed by a ward or something, and I just thought it was a plastic rubber down your nose. It's horrific. It's the worst thing ever. It's the worst thing ever, I promise you. So now drink, just any movement, you just stiffen up. And she wanted me to drink. And then she finally comes to me and she touches my hand and she says to me, you really have to drink this water. Try and drink as much as you can. We need to see it filter through. We need to see it filter through. You've got such a lovely family. She said to me, we don't want to have to lose you. It was just those words. She said, we don't want to have to lose you. I just looked up at her and I realized, that was the first time I realized, it's not just I'm not feeling too good and they'll be fine, they'll take care of me. There is a problem. And in the UK, they're very good at being discreet and not really communicating the facts of the imminent danger, as the case may be. So I started trying. She said, if my bowels don't start to move, because they, listen in with a stethoscope and there was just no sound. It was just like there's just nothing, just silence. She says, if it doesn't start to move, that I'm going straight into surgery and there's just more complications with that. She said, please, I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose you from this ward. I don't want to. So I started drinking the water. I was scheduled to go back into the theatre again by midnight after the surgeons had done a certain number of patients. And just before that, my bowels started going. There was a big sound from the corner of the recovery ward where I was, and she rushed in and she's like, it's moving, your bowel is awake, it's moving. And it was like, okay, great. And she's like, no, that means no surgery, it's going to be okay. And that was it. I turned the corner, it was all right, started to recover. The diarrhea kicked in with a catheter, moving the drip bar to the toilet and back, to the toilet and back, the catheter getting pulled out of me and then put back in, pulled out of me and put back in. A lot happened. And then I was sent back to the ward in the end. Now, I wasn't sent back to the ward I was in before. I was sent back to a different ward. And in this ward, it was different. You could tell. They weren't friendly. They were too busy. And no, they're not there to be your friend. I get it. But what I mean is, it was a very different situation. They weren't attentive. It was like, okay, that's the room. They put her in. The person who brought me in then sent me in. There was no handover. I could tell, oh, I get it. I recognize this kind of atmosphere, but I'm ready. And I was. And just as I suspected, I had 13 bags of antibiotics to take. And it was just being put in through a needle that was stuck in my arm, and it was taped on. And 13 bags, with each bag finishing, I'd have about a 2-hour break before the next bag will be put back in. So I was going to be in the hospital for a minute. So at least during that break, I'm expecting, as is the case may be, that I will now be disconnected. I will be free of the wire and I can attend to baby. Wasn't the case. They were short-staffed and they were taking care of a maternity ward and the labor ward, and the entire labor ward was filled and people were going into labor left, right and center, and they were prioritizing labor. Of course, I've had my baby, sit there and wait. But I needed help. Now, when my drip would finish, I would push the buzzer and a nurse would run in, an assistant would run in and say, what is it? And I'd say what it is. Said, we'll get back to you. Okay, sure, I'll let them know, but please don't press it again. We've got the information, so you don't need to press the button again. And then they would leave me there, and the 2 hours would lapse with me connected to a wire, and then they'll come back in and then put the drip back in again. I was connected to the wire. So while this was happening, I would lift my hand out the bed. I was getting no help. And when you do this, you're doing that on a cup belly. Yes? It's painful. So I bend this way, I lift my daughter out the cot, and then I bring her to me with one hand like that, one hand, and then place her against myself to breastfeed, and then place her on the bed, change her nappy if she needed to go, one-handed, okay, one-handed, and then put her back in her cot. transferring her with one hand by her swaddling cloth across the floor to the cot was very dangerous. So when this kept going on, I just lost it. I pushed the buzzer. She came in and said, well, we told you that is. I said, no. You take it out. I'm not taking any more medicine. So before you put in the next one, you're going to get an anesthetist who's going to fit in an actual, it's sort of like I'm going to put a picture right here. And that's what it looks like. It's meant to be connected to the drip, and when the drip finishes, it can be disconnected and I can be free. My arm can be free, and that way I can go ahead and take care of my baby with both hands. I'm fine. I'm an experienced mom. I don't need your help, but I certainly need my hand. I'm not going to have my child drop on the floor or slip through the cloth and bang on the floor. At least give me my hand. At least walk in and change it. But I understand they were short-staffed. Always short-staffed. So the anesthetist came in, had that fitted, and that way when the drip would finish, they would disconnect it and I would end up being able to take care of my child, and then they would walk in and I'd have that break before the next bag of antibiotics until the end. And when I was done, I was discharged and I went home. Those were my experiences in hospital with C-sections. So yes, while you're expecting that you'll be taken care of because you're in this situation, you might have the odd situation where someone isn't able to take care of you, not because they don't want to, but I have to believe that people aren't as mean. I have to believe and understand that there are complications in the workplace, and if someone is given what they need to function in the workplace, they will execute their jobs with care. And those are the experiences I had. Outside of that, the service was impeccable. The surgeons were amazing. The aftercare was, given by some of the most amazing, caring souls I'd ever met. And I hope it will be the same for you. So if you're watching this video, clearly you're about to have a C-section or you've had one. But here are some of the things you can be prepared for. You don't want to just stay vulnerable. Understand that you can make a demand like I did. And I said, no, I'm not having that anymore. Send an anesthetist to fit in that system where I can be detached from the wire. I'm not going to be connected to a wire for the remaining 3 days and, service my child with one hand. No. As a first-time mum, I didn't know that. Third-time mum, of course I do. So I'm wishing you the best of luck with your deliveries, the best of care, and the best outcome, and you're going to definitely end up cuddling your wonderful bundle of joy. Again, I'm wishing you all the best. Thank you so very much for watching. Don't forget to leave a comment down below, like the video, share it if you may, and thank you so much for watching. Have a good morning, a good evening, a good night wherever you are in the world, and I will see you again soon. Take care. Bye.